We drive into this cloud of propane gas, and it exploded before we were able to return from this gas cloud. So we were stuck in a huge explosion.
Okay, we're live. Lasse Gustafsson, thank you so much for coming on this podcast. It's been a while that we haven't seen or talked to each other. I'm really happy to have you here in front of me because after our last conversation in the woods, in the midst of the mountains between Bologna and Florence, you left me with wanting to know a lot more. So I'm happy to have you here and being able to know you a bit better and understand your story.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, Camille. And I also remember the walks in the woods. I think it was around 35 degrees warm.
Yes, it
those
was
days.
quite warm. Yeah, it was quite warm. It was quite warm. Lasse, can you start by telling people that don't know you, your story, who you are, how you ended up doing what you're doing, so coaching people. What is the event that has defined your life? I think we can see it pretty well on you.
Yeah. Yes, as you can see, I had received very bad and deep burns, especially on my head and my hands. I just have 2 thumbs to manage life with, and it was back in the early 80s. I was 24 years. I was absolutely new educated as a fireman and ambulance driver in my hometown Gothenburg, the west coast of Sweden. And one night we had an alarm to the oil harbor here in Gothenburg. And it was me and an elder colleague who went to this address in the oil harbor to support firemen who already were there. They need more equipments to try to stop a gas leak in a pipeline in the oil harbor. And we had that kind of support in our truck. But because of lack of communication, Leif, my colleague, he drive to the address we received in the fire station, and that was exactly where the gas leak was. And we didn't receive any more information during this 45 minutes drive through Gothenburg in the nighttime. So we didn't met our colleagues. We drive into this cloud of propane gas, and it exploded before we were able to return from this gas cloud. So we were stuck in a huge explosion. The engine died, of course, in the fire truck. And I remember that my first reaction was to protect my eyes like this with my arms. But I also saw that Leif, he did just not protect himself. He also opened the door and he yelled to me, "Run, Lasse, run," he said. And he jumped out from this fire truck. And because of his good action and also that he yelled to me, "Run," I also jumped out from the fire truck, and it was burning around the fire truck in the atmosphere. So I had to find a way, and I find a white line after a couple of seconds. And this white line, it could be, the line in the center of the road. I'm not absolutely sure about that, but that will be the guideline for me to run in one specific direction. I didn't feel any pain, actually. I felt pain when I was breathing, and during the run I also felt pain around my right leg. And I saw that my rubber boot on the right foot had started to burn. So the last thing I did with my hands, as they were created, was to try to stop the fire on the rubber boot. And after some more steps or seconds, I was out of this burning cloud of propane. A policeman took care of Leif. Leif went out from the burning glass cloud just before me, and an ordinary man took care of me. I couldn't see him so well because I had burns on my eyes, so it was very blurry. But I felt when he took me around my shoulders, and he spoke to me and said, it's over, we will call an ambulance, we will not leave you, we will stay here with you till the ambulance will show up. And he also helped me to take my coats away, because it was a lot of heat in the different layers. Yeah. So he really did do a good work, this man. I think he was around 50, 60 years. He was not an educated nurse or doctor, but he was a truly human being, and he had a good connection to his heart, and he met me on a very, very nice and human way. And I have understood later on that the safety he created for me after this accident became a very good ground to heal not only the physical injuries, more to heal the psychology injuries, so to say, the shock. And I had a work to do to understand this accident. It was like when I woke up, because when we came to the hospital, they put us to sleep, and then they fly us with a helicopter to Stockholm, because we have the best burn healthcare in Stockholm, and that's the east side of Sweden. It's around 500 kilometers. So they fly us with a helicopter, and Leif, he died after 1 month. I was unconscious for 2 months. And when I woke up after 2 months, then I had a work to do, so to say, to understand the accident. It was like, a puzzle. A puzzle can be in 1,000 small pieces.
I imagine that the memories were very blurry in some way, and that you needed to really reconstruct the series of events, how they happened.
Yeah, that's right. And when you are dealing with the puzzle, it's very hard to leave the puzzle before you have put the last little piece in the right position. And And when you have the whole picture clear, when the puzzle is totally clear, when every piece is on the right place, then you can leave the puzzle, because then you understand the picture. So, you know, I think you heard about post-traumatic stress syndrome, PTSD. Have you heard about that, Camille?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, but my way to deal with it was that I surely get time during the first year in hospital to put every piece in this puzzle, in this chaos, at the right place. And the more clear the picture become, the more easier it was to also to leave it.
I have a question about that.
Yes.
So, when you're waking up in the hospital after an accident of that magnitude, I imagine it's very easy and very natural to fall into a victim mindset where you are asking yourself, why me? Why this? And I imagine that it can become very easy to become angry and hateful towards the world, and maybe even towards God and the universe, right? Thinking that actually the universe is an evil place because it allowed this to happen to me. But if I look at you and I hear you speak, I understand that you went in a very different direction. How did you deal with not becoming a victim and not becoming angry at the world?
I think one good thing was that I was extremely weak when I woke up after 2 months. My body weight was 80 kilogram when I was 24, before the accident. And after 2 months, it was down to 40 kilogram. So I was extremely weak when I woke up. And during this weakness, I was also very aware about that different kind of thoughts directly created different kind of feelings in my body. And some feelings made it harder to breathe. One way to survive was not to create thoughts that made feelings which made it harder to breathe.
So when you had negative thoughts, it was actually more difficult for you to stay alive.
Yeah. I was so weak, so I was aware of this breath. You know, today we have things like mindfulness and meditation and so on, and I didn't know anything about that back in the beginning of the 80s when I was 24. Today I've been studying mindfulness and meditation and things like that. And now I have words for this, and also some kind of awareness. But it was like an instinct for me when I was so weak, not to fall in this deep, muddy swamp of bitterness, pittiness. I'm just a victim, and also anger and hate and revenge. Do you know that you start breathe in your mother's belly? Before you are born, you start breathe, because if you shouldn't start breathe inside your mother's belly, then the muscles should not be strong enough to breathe when you are newborn. And I have been laying in a breath machine for 2 months, so my muscles for breathing, they were very, very weak after 2 months in a breathing machine. And therefore I was very, very aware of this breath and this breath. And that helped me to avoid bad thoughts and heavy feelings.
That's That's incredible, because we always hear about, the relationship between thoughts and breath, and how your thoughts can influence your breath and how your breath can influence your thoughts. But what you're saying, if I understand correctly, is that through breathing and through this necessity of, since you were so weak, having to manage your energy, it was a sort of psychotherapy that you did on yourself, right? So you were weak, and the only way you could stay alive and have energy is if you actually conditioned yourself to think the right things. Wow.
If you would like a picture, you can say that if you're in a very deep muddy hole, a deep muddy dark hole, you can't see anything in the bottom of this deep muddy hole, but you can feel with your hands there is a wooden plank lying up on the wall through this mudding hole. Can you picture that picture? Yeah. And how should you do to come out from this muddy hole? The only way out is to walk very, very carefully on this wooden plank. And if you take one step beside of this wooden plank, you will glide down again to the bottom. And that was, I was very aware of that. Just a couple of thoughts beside this rescue plank should make me fall down again to the bottom of this muddy hole. So that's a picture. Maybe you can see it.
Yes.
Inside your head.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. The only way out was for you to make sure that you were not becoming weaker with your own mind, that your mind wasn't making you become weaker, but you were actually making your body stronger and curing yourself in some way by thinking the right things.
And stay on this narrow wooden plank to come up from this muddy hole. Yeah.
And during your time unconscious, so I have a quote from your TED Talk, which I think is very interesting. So you start your TEDx talk, which I think people should go listen to, even if it's in Swedish, you can find with subtitles, where you're starting to wake up, and you say that your mother told you that your partner Leif had died, but that you weren't surprised, because during your time unconscious, you had told him goodbye already. Can you go through that a bit? Because that's very unusual, I think.
Yeah. My parents and my family, they decide that it should be at least one member from my family at the hospital in Stockholm during the time when I was put asleep. So if I should wake up, one member from the family should be there. They decided that. And after 2 months, my mom and dad was there. And as you said, that one of the first thing was that my mother told me that Leif died. And it was not surprising, because I had a very, very strong and clear memory that we had met each other during this time of unconsciousness. And of course, it's very, very hard to explain how can you meet someone when you are unconscious. Yeah. And there is a lot of science who try to understand what is consciousness. And many science, they are making research that think that consciousness is inside your brain. There is where the conscious is.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's only inside the brain. I also think that in some way it's around you. And Leif and I, during this 2 months of unconsciousness, we met, and we met in the same way that I noticed that you do if you drive an ambulance with a colleague one night, and it's a heavy night, you know, with a lot of alarms. People are dying in the ambulance, people are maybe get born in the ambulance. You are very, very tired after that kind of night. But before you get home to just fall asleep in your own bed, it's very important to say thank you to your colleague. And Leif and I met and we said thank you. Now we go home, we said. So in my culture, and maybe also in Italy, we used to say that Leif passed away, but I had a strong experience that he had went home, and home was different places right now for Leif and me.
Yeah.
I will also say that I had just been working 1 week as a fireman, so I didn't have any deeper connection, deeper relation to Leif. I didn't know that he had a son who just was 1.5 years, that he was pretty new married. I didn't know about that. I have learned that later on, and also met his grown-up son. You know, his son today, he's over 40 years, and so on. But this experience, this clear picture, a memory that we met during this unconscious period, made me not surprised when my mother told me that he had passed away.
Could you be able to justify it by just saying it was a dream? Do you think it was a dream?
Do you remember a dream you had 40 years ago?
No,
Not so
I'm not
common.
40 years old, but I don't remember dreams I had 2 days ago.
Okay.
No.
It could, of course, be a dream. It could be a hallucination. But for me, it's more real, this meet we had. This meet we had, Leif and I, it's absolutely surreal that our conversation right now, that you and me have. I can't prove for anyone that we had a meeting, but I don't have need to prove it for anyone. For me, it's truth, and that's enough for me.
Right.
Another thing I also experienced when I was unconscious was actually a wonderful vision, so to say. It was that I was invited to a mountain ridge, and I can't say who invited me to this mountain ridge, but there was an invitation to a mountain ridge, and I find myself standing on this ridge, looking down to a deep, wonderful valley. There was a river floating in the bottom of this valley, and there was green forests, and it was so deep, this valley, so I couldn't hear any sound coming up from the valley. But it was a wonderful valley. It was late afternoon. The sun was up, and it was a stillness and a wonderful harmony in this deep valley. And suddenly, the surface from this valley was ripping off, and the whole skin, so to say, from the valley was focused to a point up in the sky, and it created an eye an eye in the sky, and I could see in the iris, I could see the planet Earth. I could see the continents, the green and yellow continents, and I could also see the oceans, the blue oceans. So it was a very, very beautiful eye. And I could also see from the dark pupil that there was a ray of a light coming out from the pupil. And the first quality I could see in this ray of light was power. Power to create and power to also destroy. And I remember that it was so enormous, this power, so I felt almost like a little child and put down my head. But before I took my eyes from this wonderful ray of light, I also could see that it was also love in this ray. So there were very, very strong life power connected to an endless kind of quality of love. And that made me understood that it was no harm in this enormous power. And so I could also see that it was a mixture of wisdom in this ray of light. So I could identify 3 qualities: life power, endless love, and enormous wisdom. And I can also see in the corner of the eye a glimpse of humor. It was
Humor.
like this eye was looking at something. Humor, yeah? Happiness.
Why humor?
Why humor? I don't know. Ask the eye. It was like, you know, if you are looking at something which you find it's perfect and beautiful. For example, you like skiing, right, Kamel?
Yes.
And when you are skiing, when you are going up on your skis, your randonnée skis, and you go up, and you perhaps go coming up to a mountain ridge, and you look down in the other valley, and you see there is a wonderful snow lying there, and you're the first skier who can make your own turns in this layer of snow. Then you will have this glimpse of happiness and humor in your eye.
Yeah.
And that's what I saw in this eye in the sky.
So almost like a sense of satisfaction.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
And you know, the same satisfaction as when you're creating something which you see when you had created it, that wow, it become better than I thought from the beginning. Then you will have the same glimpse of satisfaction and joy and happiness in your eye. So that kind of quality was also in the corner of the eye.
Would you call this a near-death experience that you were having, like seeing the experience of creation when you were near death? How do you justify it today? When you look back at it, what do you say? Okay, this is what I experienced.
Yeah. It took me many years before I could start to put words on this experience, because it was a holy experience. When you experience something which is so wonderful, then you are also very careful to put words and label on it.
Yes.
And I have been studying, and I also meet people who had near near-death experience. But near-death experience will follow another kind of process. That's what I learned when I have been reading about near-to-death experience.
Yeah.
And this is another kind of process. So I prefer to call this a near-to-life experience instead.
Do you have you ever had a way to experience something similar again? The same feeling?
No, I can't say that. But sometimes I can say that in life, when I'm doing things, I can feel a touch of this experience. For example, right now when I'm looking at my computer, I have a picture on my computer. I can see my youngest son. We are out on a small island at the west coast of Sweden. We have just put up our tent, and he is making a fire, and I can see in the afternoon sunset, I can see the sea is lying perfectly still, and it's mirror the sky and the clouds above. And we are so happy to be on this island, Gustav and I. And when I see this picture, I can feel the breath of the same quality that this eye had. It's about life power, it's love and harmony, and the nature is in a balance, and there is a wisdom to create that kind of balance, that it's above our understanding. And there is, I can see in Gustav's eye, there is a glimpse of satisfaction and humor as well. So I think this quality, life power, love and wisdom, we all have this quality inside, in our souls. Everyone has it. And no matter what religion you are raised in, we have the same quality inside our souls. I will also say that I think that when it's balanced, when life power and a good intention of love, and there is a natural wisdom, when it's balanced between these three qualities, then life is good. And when it's unbalanced, then you will not feel the same kind of satisfaction and happiness. So this experience had helped me to have balance, not to take too long steps, be aware of my intention, to have a good intention in meeting, when I met people and do things, and also use the wisdom, the knowledge you have to do it in a good way.
Right. So what you're saying is we all have these qualities, and we can choose to manifest them in our life. That's the lesson that you got out of it.
Yeah. And I took an example from your life, because you like skiing and you like to go up with skins on your skis. And if you not use your experience and your wisdom, then you can very, very easily end up in troubles, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So it's about to have balance in life.
Yeah. I'd like to go back a second at the moments after you wake up, because I think there's a lot of life lessons and important things to learn from that. Because we know in our society we hate ego, right? We say ego is the enemy, but having an identity actually helps you live life, and it gives you something to look forward to. But you had your identity basically taken away in a very short moment of time in an accident, because you woke up and I imagine just with your looks, but inside as well, you felt like a totally different person. Can you, how do you start getting back to life, right? In those moments, how do you create a new identity? Who is the new Lasse?
Yeah, yes. I would like to start to say that I don't think that we should hate ego, because we need ego to navigate in social situations, to behave in a good way. You need a culture ego to understand. For example, both we like to travel, and you know, if you come to another culture, you don't know if you should go inside with your shoes on, or if you should take off your shoes before you go inside. So when you create the ego, it's necessary to have a good function in social situations. But you are not your ego. You have an ego. That's the difference. Mm-hmm. I am not a fireman. I am working as a fireman. Yes. That's the difference. When I identify myself with my education, then I'm stuck in my ego. And that can create problems. But if I use my education as a fireman to navigate in life, then it's good. So we need the ego, but we should not identify ourselves 100%
it's a tool, basically.
to the ego. It's a tool. That's great. But you know, it's very easy to identify your tool. For example, if you have a car, if you identify yourself with your Mercedes-Benz, maybe you think you are a better human being comparing to those who are just driving a Volkswagen. So that's a trap, so to say. Okay, but you know, when I woke up after 2 months, I was blind, so I couldn't see anything for 1 month. But during this blind month, I could connect to myself, inside myself. I couldn't see my new face in a mirror, but I could see myself inside of me. And I understood that the center of me is still there. There is no harm to the inside. So that made me feel comfort and trust that I am the same guy as I always has been. And after one month, when the doctors could open up my eyes, of course it was horrible to see my hands. They was not useful at all. And after a couple of months, the doctor could open up, so I could start to use my thumbs like this. But it was a sorrow. It was a deep sorrow to see that I didn't have my hands anymore. And I was a Boy Scout since I was a teenager, and I understood that hands are necessary to have when you're out in nature, putting up a fire, putting up the tent, coping with things in nature. Hands is very good, of course.
Yeah.
And also, to work as a fireman, you really need your hands. When you work in an ambulance, you really need your hands to take care of people who have different kind of injuries. So there was a deep sorrow to understand that I don't have any hands anymore. And also, first time I saw myself in a mirror, that was a really shock. I couldn't recognize myself at all. The only thing I could see was recognizable was my eyes. And my eyes, they were they were really afraid when they were looking back to me from the mirror. But I think the good thing to be blind was that I was already pretty safe inside of me. I'm still the same person as before the accident. And I can also say that the good meetings I had from nurses who took care of my burns, you see, it took hours to take care of the burns every day. And during these hours, when there was not too much pain, we could talk and have fun, the nurses and I. It was my closest relations during the first time in hospital. It was the staff in the hospital, and they were so nice, these nurses. They did do the best, and I also felt that they had a heart and compassion in the way they treated me. So it was so wonderful to feel this humanity from the nurses. And my experience was that they could see me behind my burns. Does it make sense, Camille?
Yeah.
And that experience made me believe that if they can see me behind my burns,
then you should see
probably
yourself.
anyone, then I could see myself, and also anyone who is open, has an open mind, can see me behind my burns.
Sorry, I'm interrupting you 1 second because I think it's a good moment to explain to people how we met. So we were walking in the forest in the Apennines, as I was saying in the beginning, and I was with a group of friends, and you were with your partner at that time. And I wasn't really paying too much attention. I was focusing on where we were going. I was hungry, I think, probably. But your partner at a certain point, so I hadn't really noticed that you had these injuries. But your partner at the time told me, do you want to know why he's like that? What happened to him? So I turned around, I looked at you, and I saw your burns, and I was like, oh, yeah, what happened, right? But I imagine that it wasn't always the case that you were so open with telling the story, because it's really difficult, I imagine. But how did you get to being the one that engages directly with people and tell them, do you want to know why I'm like that? Do you want to know my story? And make it actually a point of connection? Because I would guess that the natural instinct would be for people to look at you and you feeling judged. But you do the opposite. You tell people directly what your story is so that it becomes a point to transfer an important message. How did you get there?
I used my wife. I put her a couple of steps before me, and I use her. No, not all the time, of course. And you know, Lena and I, we have just been a couple since 12 years. We met 12 years ago. But I noticed when I could leave hospital after 2 years of healing these burns, I noticed, of course, that people were looking at me more, little bit longer than normal. And it was a little bit scary, of course. But I also noticed that some people, they were looking at me, and then they look away. For example, if I was into a restaurant or into a pub, some people, they look away immediately because they didn't feel comfort, I think. But some people, they look at me with some kind of curiosity, and that make me to understood that it's easy to start to talk with people who are a little bit curious about what happened to that guy. So for me, it became an icebreaker to start talk to people who had this curiosity in their eyes. And I also learned that if I feel okay, if I feel comfort, and if I have an inner feeling of happiness, then it's more easier to other people to face me. But if I am a little bit scared, if I'm stressed, if I don't know how to deal with this meeting, then I will communicate that kind of stress to other people. So I learned that if you would like to change the outer world, start to create what you would like to see more of inside yourself. Start here, and that will mirror from the outside after a while.
How do you get there? Some people are embarrassed by very small things. For example, they feel a bit overweight and they feel judged all the time. You're literally covered in burns, and you're very different, I imagine, than what you were before. But how do you exude that outer confidence of, this is who I am, and I accept myself, and I want the world to see who I am? How do you get to that point?
I think I experiment. I tried different kind of attitude, and I find that if I create a balance, a comfort, and a harmony inside myself, that will last longer, and it will be easier to connect to other people.
Yeah.
If I am who I am. So I think I experiment in the beginning to learn and to find the best way for me. And you know, I was in Chamonix last week, and we ordered pizza from a wonderful small pizza hut, and me and my friend were there. And we bought 5 pizzas because we were 5 friends at the hotel, and a French woman, she said to my friend, because he had to pay for the pizza, and she was standing in the line to paying for her pizzas, and she said that, wow, I saw your friend. And I must say that I'm so happy and so impressed that he's absolutely behaving normal. I really like that, she said, to my friend. She didn't say it to me, but she said it to my friend. And my friend told me when we went back with the pizzas that this French woman, she told me this. So, yeah, I have tried different kind of ways, and to be yourself, to don't be embarrassed about that, to stand up. Not that you are better than anyone, but you are good enough, so to say.
Yeah, I think it goes almost opposite to the attitude of today's age, you know, where online everybody's trying to show how much I am more of a victim than you because this happened to me. No, I'm more of a victim than you because this happened to me. And I think your attitude is really the definition of, I know maybe you're not going to like this word, but heroism, being a hero, you know, because life is really difficult, and everybody can be a victim in some way if they want and they look enough to see the injustice. But your attitude is the exact opposite. It's, I had a really bad accident in my life. Something really bad happened to me. But I am going to decide that I'm going to not only pass this obstacle, but I'm going to make this obstacle my message to the world. And I think that's a definition of heroism. And if we learn from that, anybody can apply a bit of that in their own life. I think life would be better.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after getting out of the hospital and slowly getting back to life, you actually went back to the fire department. So you actually started working again. And now you are basically, correct me if I'm wrong, you basically work as a speaker and life coach, right? So how did that transition look like? How did you get back to work? How did you get back to creating a new identity for yourself and giving yourself a new mission in life? How did that process look like?
Yeah. You know, I was absolutely new, educated as a fireman and an ambulance man. So my focus was still in that direction. So after the accident, it was very hard to find another direction. So the first goal for me was to be able to come back to the work as a fireman again. I couldn't work in the front line, but I worked 8 years as a driver. You know, the mission Leif and I had to support the front line with supplies, that was my work for 8 years. So I drive different kind of fire trucks to support the front line. But after 8 years, I didn't feel that I was developing anything more. It was almost the same water leak, the same forest fires, the same. I didn't develop, but I had also started to give speeches at different kind of fire stations in Sweden, and also in the fire schools. We have around 4 fire schools in Sweden, and during my free days I was going to these schools and giving speech about this accident and our experience from the accident. And also I was also invited to nurse schools in Gothenburg, and that became a new profession for me, to work as an educator. But I would like after 8 years to open up to talk not only about this accident and the experience around it. I would also start to talk about how to create a good life, how to find out what's the quality of life for you, and so on. So after 8 years, I quit work, and I was in school for a couple of years, and learned about health, but also about mental training. So in 2 years I was studied that for full time, and after that a new kind of work was coming up in my life. And that was back in the early 19s, this. So for 30 years I've been working as a teacher right now.
How do you find the strength to go on when there is difficulties that you feel unsurmountable? Where do you find that strength? Where does it come from?
I think today, of course, I have a good perspective from how I cope with this accident to reorganize my life again. That give me trust and also perspective to other kind of problems I face into life. And you know that there is a Buddhistic say that says that if there is a problem who have a solution, no need to worry. And if the problem don't have any solution, no need to worry. So the problem sometimes is that you are worried so much.
Yeah.
And if you have a little bit of this glimpse of satisfaction, and if you can use your humor, and then you have a perspective, and then you can find that there is a solution on this problem, or there is no solution on this problem. I will never have my 10 fingers again. I will just have these 2 thumbs.
Yeah.
But I can find another way with these new hands today. Not just feeling the sadness about that I miss my 10 fingers. And I was very happy. Am I right if I say that Nordica make ski boots in Italy?
Yeah. Yes.
Is that an Italian brand, Nordica?
Yes, you are correct.
Yes, and then I would like to show you. Yeah. Two years ago, I find this Nordica, and it's called HF. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can.
And HF, do you know what it stands for? It stands for hands-free. So these boots, they don't need hands. I can put my feet inside these boots, and I can with my feet I can. I don't know if it's. You know, I do this with the feet.
Yeah.
I don't need hands. So that's the Italian brand Nordica helps me to do skiing.
So
Still.
you found a solution to the problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no need to worry.
Yeah. there is always a solution. Yeah. If you could have a magic wand and have people develop just one skill in life that helps them face difficulties, do you have any idea what that skill would be?
Hope. Because hope is half the solution. In small steps and in big steps, it's you need hope.
Yeah. Yeah, Lasse, to start going towards a conclusion of this conversation, I still have a couple of questions to ask you. First of all, do you ever get tired of telling your story? Because I imagine you tell it multiple times a week when you meet people. Does it ever get tiring?
I get tired if I'm in stock. If I am become stuck in one version of the accident. But if I can be free and describe the accident in the way that my brain would like to find it today, then I always find some new details which inspired me to keep on and describe it.
Yeah. Do you believe in destiny? Let me explain what I mean. Do you think what happened to you happened for a reason, or it just happened and then you had to find a reason for it to happen? because, you know, many times, especially there's a field of thought which comes from Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. He says that we always look for meaning in life, and that's what helps us face really big obstacles. Do you think what happened to you happened for a reason, or is it just life?
I think today, when you ask me today, and I can answer from my perspective from today, I think that there is a part of my conscious which will survive my physical death, and that part has another level of meaning. And very often, as a human being, I can't understand that level, that horizon of meaning.
Yeah.
So sometimes you had to search for a meaning for yourself, even if you can't understand it on a spiritual level.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can make, for example, an accident in life. You can make it meaningful by learn how to share your experience and give it away. But I also think it's one way to feel meaning is to focus on gratitude, thankfulness. Focus on thankfulness.
Yeah.
We met each other in the forest in Italy, and we had a good chat walking in these
Yeah.
these warm days. And now we are meeting again, and perhaps people who are listening and watching your pod, perhaps they can get inspired of what we are talking about.
Yeah.
And I feel a kind of thankfulness for that. And that's also meaningful.
If you could go back in time and speak with 24-year-old Lasse, who just woke up from his 2 months of being unconscious, what would you tell him?
Actually, I think I will be more interested to listen to him, because in that weakness, in some way, I was very close to my own wisdom, and I was also very, very close to a source of happiness inside. I remember when I was free from pain in the bed, there was like a wonderful source of happiness inside of me. And I was just laying in the bed, free from pain, drinking from this source, this happiness. And I remember that I experienced that when I was a little child, but I had almost forgot that this source of happiness is inside me. I don't need things outside of me to feel happy if I am connected to this inner source of happiness. So if I could meet this man, 24-year-old, I should be more interested to hear him speak about that, because it's so easy to forget that source. You are looking for next thing to make you happy.
Yeah.
When you're adult.
And last question, I would say, hardest one, maybe you can choose not to answer. What is the meaning of life?
It's to share, I think. to help and to share. Give people hope. No matter what you do, give people hope.
I think that's a great point to end this, Lasse. Where can people find you? If they want to reach out to you, know a bit more about your story, how can they get in contact with you?
Facebook is one way, and email another. And my email is lasse@pan.se. SE stands for Sweden.
Yes, and I will make sure to include those links in the description of the YouTube video. Lasse, thank you again. Thank you again. I think you're the closest thing to a hero that we can find, because again, using your story to inspire people and to show them that you can go forward no matter what in life is, I think, what we need in the world, and we have too little of it. So we need more people like you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Camille. Hope to see you in the slopes of
hope to go
Dolomites.
skiing together. Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Lasse. Thank you. Have a nice day. Grazie per aver guardato questo episodio fino in fondo. Se questi contenuti ti piacciono, ricordati di cliccare lì per iscriverti al canale, lascia un like e condividi questo episodio con i tuoi amici. Ci vediamo alla prossima.